Wait, you're putting that inside me? The Apache woman froze as the cowboy tried to save her life. The sun hung low in the sky, painting the wide plains with a warm golden light. The air was dry but carried the scent of earth and grass, a smell that was familiar to the Apache woman. She had always known this land, every hill, every riverbank, every hidden trail. The vastness of it made her feel free, and yet it could be dangerous if one was not careful. On this day, she walked alone, carrying a small bundle of supplies. Her journey was meant to be simple, just a few hours to gather herbs and check on her small camp tucked near the edge of the canyon. But life, as it often did, had other plans. She had always been cautious, learning from her family how to respect the land and its challenges. The Apache people had taught her to move quietly, to watch for signs, and to listen to the whispers of the wind. Today, however, despite all her experience, she felt a slight unease. There was nothing obvious, no danger in sight, but her instincts told her to be alert. She shook her head and tried to push the feeling away, telling herself that she was overthinking. The trail she followed was narrow, worn by years of footsteps but still unpredictable. Rocks jutted out here and there, and the ground sloped sharply on one side. She stepped carefully, focusing on each footfall. A sudden sound, a small snapping of twigs, made her freeze. She looked around, her eyes scanning the shadows cast by the setting sun. For a moment she thought it might be an animal. Deer perhaps, or a coyote moving in the distance. But nothing appeared. She exhaled slowly, trying to calm the rising tension in her chest. Hours passed as she moved further along the trail. The sun was dipping lower, casting long shadows across the canyon walls. Suddenly, her foot slipped on a loose rock. She felt herself tumbling down a short slope before catching on a low branch. Pain shot through her ankle, sharp and sudden, making her gasp. She tried to stand, but the pain was too much. She realized that she had injured herself badly. Panic began to creep in. Alone, far from help, the thought of being stuck here frightened her. She tried to move again, but each attempt brought sharp pain, making her wince. The sun was almost gone now, and the shadows were deepening, hiding the landscape around her. Fear mingled with determination. She knew she could not stay there. She had to find help. She looked around desperately, hoping for some sign of life. Then, in the distance, she saw movement. A figure approaching along the ridge. Her heart leapt with both hope and caution. The figure came closer. It was a man, dressed in the rugged clothing of a cowboy. His hat shaded his face, and he walked with confidence across the uneven terrain. He seemed calm and sure of himself, a person who belonged to the land but carried a sense of authority that came with experience. The woman felt a mix of relief and suspicion. She had heard stories of outsiders, some kind and helpful, others careless and harmful. She did not know which this man would be. As he drew near, he noticed her struggle. "Are you all right?" he called, his voice steady but concerned. The woman looked at him, unsure. She did not speak immediately, her pride and caution warring with a desperate need for help. The cowboy continued, "You look hurt. I can help you, but you need to let me." His tone was gentle, without demand, but filled with urgency. The woman weighed her options. She could refuse and risk staying alone with her injury, or she could trust this stranger and hope he meant no harm. Finally, she nodded slightly. I fell," she admitted, her voice shaking. She could feel the pain in her ankle throbbing with each heartbeat. The cowboy approached carefully, kneeling beside her to examine the injury. His hands were steady, experienced. "You've sprained it badly," he said. "If we don't do something soon, it could get worse." "I can help, but it might hurt a little." The woman swallowed hard. Pain had never frightened her before, but now it felt like a heavy weight pressing down on her. The cowboy moved with care, assessing her condition. "I need to make sure nothing is broken," he explained. "I have some supplies with me. They'll help stabilize your ankle so you can move safely." The woman froze, her mind racing. The thought of someone touching her, putting something inside her, even for help, made her instinctively tense. "Wait, you're putting that inside me?" she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. The cowboy smiled gently, sensing her hesitation. "It's not what you think," he said.
It's medicine, and it will help you. I promise. I'm just trying to make sure you're safe.
He spoke calmly, explaining every step as he prepared his supplies. The woman studied him carefully, noting the sincerity in his eyes and the careful way he handled the materials. Slowly, she allowed herself to breathe, though fear still lingered. Time seemed to stretch as he worked. Each movement was deliberate, meant to reassure and not startle her. She could feel her body tensing, then relaxing slightly as she realized that he was truly there to help, not to harm. The cowboy's presence was steady, a rock in the storm of pain and fear. He continued to speak in soft tones, guiding her through the process, explaining what each step would do and why it mattered. Her mind wandered to her family and the lessons she had learned from them. They had taught her to be strong, to trust her instincts, and to respect the land. Yet now, she was learning something new. Sometimes survival meant trusting others, even strangers, when circumstances demanded it. The realization was humbling, and she felt a mix of gratitude and anxiety. The sun had nearly disappeared behind the canyon walls, and the first stars were beginning to appear. Darkness was approaching, but she no longer felt completely alone. The cowboy's presence was reassuring, and his careful handling of her injury gave her hope. She realized that help could come in unexpected forms, and sometimes accepting it was the only way to survive. As the night settled in, they prepared to move her to a safer location. She leaned on his support, wincing with every careful step, but trusting him more with each passing moment. Her fear had not vanished entirely, but it had transformed into cautious trust. The cowboy continued to speak in gentle tones, encouraging her and keeping her focused on each step forward. By the time they reached a small clearing suitable for resting, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. She was not fully healed, but she was safe for the moment, and that was enough. The cowboy had proven that his intentions were genuine, that his experience and calm demeanor were real. She could see the kindness in his eyes and the determination to help her survive. As she settled down, she reflected on the day's events. Life on the plains was unpredictable, dangerous, and sometimes frightening. Yet in the face of fear, there was also courage, trust, and unexpected friendship. The Apache woman had faced her doubts and her fear, and in doing so she had found an ally in the most unlikely of places, a cowboy, rugged and steady, who had arrived just in time to help her when she needed it most. The night grew darker, but she felt safer than she had in hours. The stars above shone brightly, a reminder of the vast world around her and the resilience she carried within. She realized that life was fragile, trust was precious, and courage often meant letting go of fear long enough to accept help when it was offered. And so, under the quiet sky, she rested, knowing that she had survived the first challenge of what would become a remarkable story of trust, courage, and unexpected connections. The night was quiet, broken only by the distant call of an owl and the faint rustle of leaves in the cool wind. The Apache woman sat on a flat rock, her ankle wrapped carefully by the cowboy. Though the immediate danger of the fall had passed, a new worry had begun to settle in her mind. Pain pulsed through her leg, steady and insistent, reminding her that she was far from fully safe. She tried to shift her weight, testing her balance, but a sharp twinge forced her back down. The cowboy noticed immediately. "Easy," he said gently, kneeling beside her. "We need to make sure it's treated properly or it could get worse. I can help you move, but I need to do a little more first." Her stomach knotted with anxiety. Do I have to?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Memories of past experiences where strangers had not always been kind filled her mind. Yet there was no one else around. The wilderness stretched for miles, and her body would not allow her to move far. She had to rely on him. He met her gaze steadily.
"I know it's scary," he admitted. "I'll be careful."
"I won't do anything that could hurt you. I just need you to trust me for a moment. That's all." For a long moment she hesitated. The words "trust me" echoed in her mind. It was not something she offered easily. She had grown up learning to protect herself, to be cautious of outsiders. But as she looked at him, she saw the genuine concern in his eyes. the careful way he had already handled her injury, and the steady calm in his voice. Slowly, she nodded, the first tiny spark of trust forming. The cowboy began preparing his supplies. From his worn leather bag, he carefully pulled out small vials, cloths, and tools that looked strange and foreign to her. Her eyes widened. "Wait, you're putting that inside me?" she asked again, fear rising sharply in her chest. He smiled softly, understanding her hesitation. "It's medicine, not anything dangerous," he said. "It will help with the pain and keep your ankle from getting worse. I'll explain everything as I go. You'll feel a little pressure, maybe discomfort, but it will help you in the long run." The Apache woman's mind raced. She had never experienced anything like this before, especially from someone she barely knew. Her instincts screamed caution, yet every logical thought reminded her she had no other option. The choice was simple. Trust this man and accept help, or remain alone and risk her injury worsening in the dark wilderness. Slowly she exhaled, letting the tension in her shoulders loosen slightly. "Okay," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Do it." The cowboy's hands were steady and practiced. He wrapped her ankle with a clean cloth, then gently pressed a small tool against the injured area. The sensation was strange, and for a moment she flinched. "Breathe," he instructed softly. "Just focus on your breathing. It will help." She obeyed, inhaling deeply and feeling the cool night air fill her lungs. She focused on the sound of the wind, the distant hoot of the owl, and the slow rhythm of her heartbeat. Gradually, her body relaxed enough for him to continue. He worked carefully, adjusting the cloth and using the tools to stabilize her ankle. The discomfort was there, sharp at times but manageable. With each passing minute, she realized that he was not going to harm her. "Almost done," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "I need to put a small amount of medicine inside to help with swelling and pain. It won't hurt too much." Her eyes widened again, and her lips pressed tightly together. Fear flickered in her chest.
Inside me?
"Are you sure?" "Yes," he replied gently. "I promise it's safe. I've done this many times. It's just to help your body heal." His confidence was steady, like a lighthouse guiding her through a storm. She could see that he truly cared. Slowly, she nodded again, swallowing her fear. The moment the medicine was administered, a strange warmth spread through her ankle. It was uncomfortable at first, but then it eased the pain slightly. She let out a shaky breath and looked at him. It feels better," she admitted softly. He nodded, smiling. "See? I told you it would help. We just need to keep it wrapped and supported now, and it should heal without too much trouble." For a while they sat quietly together, the night surrounding them. The Apache woman watched the stars, feeling a sense of wonder mixed with cautious relief. She had always admired the sky, but tonight it seemed brighter, more comforting. She realized that life was fragile, and yet there were moments of unexpected care and kindness that could make all the difference. The cowboy broke the silence. "We should get you to a safer spot for the night," he said. "You can't stay here on the rocks. The ground is uneven, and it's cold. I can help you move slowly." She nodded, wincing slightly as she tried to stand. With his support, she took careful steps. Pain shot through her ankle, but his steady hands and encouraging words helped her focus on each movement. Slowly, they made their way to a small, sheltered area under a cluster of trees. The ground was flat and soft, suitable for resting until morning. Once they settled, he prepared a small area with blankets he had carried. "Try to keep your leg elevated," he instructed. "It will help reduce swelling." She adjusted herself, still feeling the lingering fear from earlier. "You know," he said gently, "most people would be too afraid to let someone they barely know help them. But you trusted me even when it was hard. That takes courage." Her face flushed slightly. "I didn't have much choice," she replied, her voice small. "I couldn't move by myself." He chuckled softly. "Maybe not, but courage isn't only about fighting alone. Sometimes it's about knowing when to accept help." His words stayed with her. She had always believed strength meant independence, but tonight she had learned that trust could also be a kind of strength. The night grew colder, and the wind rustled through the leaves above. They talked quietly, sharing small stories about life in the plains, about family, about the land. The Apache woman learned that the cowboy had traveled far, learning skills from many people and places, yet he respected the land and the people who lived on it. She realized that beneath the rugged exterior he carried a careful respect for life. As hours passed, her pain eased further. The medicine and careful wrapping had done their job, and the steady presence of someone who cared made the night less frightening. She felt a cautious gratitude grow inside her. Perhaps, she thought, survival was not only about strength and knowledge, but also about courage, trust, and accepting help when it was offered. The night stretched on, and they eventually fell into a light, careful sleep. The Apache woman dreamed of the plains, of hills and rivers and the freedom she had always loved, but also of the unexpected kindness she had experienced. She knew the next day would bring new challenges, but for now, she was safe, and that was enough. When she awoke, the first light of dawn filtered through the trees. She looked down at her ankle and saw that the swelling had reduced, the pain more manageable. The cowboy stirred beside her, already preparing to move. "Ready to continue?" he asked softly. She nodded, feeling a mix of determination and cautious hope. The journey ahead would not be easy, but she knew now that she did not have to face it alone. With careful steps and the support of someone who truly wanted to help, she could face whatever the day might bring. As they set off together, the Apache woman realized that her understanding of courage and trust had shifted. Fear was natural, but sometimes bravery meant letting someone in, even for a moment, to help carry the burden. And for the first time in a long while, she felt that she was not only surviving but learning, growing, and discovering the unexpected strength that came from opening herself to help. The plains stretched wide before them, filled with both beauty and danger. But she no longer faced them with complete fear. She had learned that in the wilderness, as in life, hope often arrived when least expected, and sometimes in the form of a kind, steady hand willing to help when it mattered most. The morning sun rose slowly over the wide plains, turning the sky a soft pink and gold. The Apache woman opened her eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face, and for the first time in hours, she felt a sense of calm. Her ankle still ached, but the pain had dulled significantly. She looked over at the cowboy, who was already moving carefully, gathering the small supplies they had used the night before. "Good morning," he said softly, noticing her awake. His voice had a calm steadiness that always seemed to ground her, even when fear was nearby. She nodded in reply, still cautious, still uncertain about the strange mix of fear and trust she felt toward him. Yet somehow his presence was reassuring. "Ready to move?" he asked. "We need to get you to a safer place, somewhere with water and shade. It'll be easier to rest and heal there." She hesitated, wincing as she shifted her leg. "I think so," she said quietly. "But it will hurt." "I know," he said gently, "but I'll be here every step of the way. You won't have to do it alone." Slowly, he helped her to her feet. Her ankle trembled as she put weight on it, and she bit her lip against the sharp sting. The cowboy's hands stayed close, ready to support her if she stumbled. Step by careful step, they began moving along the rocky trail. The path was uneven, and the morning air carried a slight chill that made her shiver. Every movement was a test of patience, every step a reminder of how vulnerable she had felt the day before. As they moved, the Apache woman's mind wandered. She had spent so much of her life learning to survive alone, to trust only herself and her instincts. But now, with each careful step guided by the cowboy, she realized that survival sometimes meant trusting others, even strangers. She had never imagined that someone she barely knew could become so important in such a short time. The cowboy noticed her silence and smiled gently. "You're doing well," he said. "I know it hurts, but you're stronger than you think. Just focus on each step, one at a time." She nodded, gripping his arm for support. I didn't think I'd need help like this," she admitted. "I've always managed on my own." "Everyone needs help sometimes," he replied. "Even the strongest people." His words were simple but powerful, and she felt a warmth spread through her chest. There was something comforting about the way he spoke, honest, patient, and steady. As they continued, the trail became more difficult. Loose rocks and small ridges forced them to move slowly. The Apache woman's confidence wavered as pain shot through her ankle with every step. She wanted to stop, to rest, but she also knew that staying still too long in the open plains could be dangerous. The cowboy adjusted her pace, helping her navigate the tricky sections, always keeping her safety first. "You're doing great," he encouraged, his voice calm.
Just a little further, and we'll find a better place to rest. We're not far now.
She glanced up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and hesitation. I trust you," she said quietly, almost in disbelief at her own words. She had never trusted anyone so quickly, and yet something about him made it feel natural. The cowboy nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "Thank you for trusting me," he said softly. "It means a lot. I'll do everything I can to keep you safe." Hours passed as they slowly made their way across the plains. The sun climbed higher, and the heat began to intensify. They stopped occasionally to rest, the cowboy making sure she had water and shade whenever possible. Each pause allowed her to regain strength, but also to reflect on the strange bond forming between them. Fear was still present, but so was a growing sense of trust and even comfort. At one point, the trail led them to a narrow ridge overlooking a small river below. The sight of the water filled the Apache woman with relief and hope. "We're close," the cowboy said, smiling. "Just a short way down and you'll be able to rest properly." Her heart lifted, but the path down the ridge was steep and tricky. Loose stones made each step dangerous. She paused, unsure how to proceed.
"I don't know if I can make it," she admitted, fear creeping back into her voice.
The cowboy knelt beside her, placing his hand gently on her shoulder. "You can," he said calmly. "And you won't do it alone. I'll guide you every step. Trust yourself and me, and we'll get there safely." She took a deep breath and nodded, slowly, carefully. She followed his lead. He placed his hand behind her for support and adjusted her steps, showing her where to step safely. Each movement was tense, every small slip a reminder of how fragile she felt, but she pressed on. As they descended, she realized how much courage it took to rely on someone else. She had always believed that strength was measured by independence, by surviving alone in the world. But now, leaning on the cowboy's steady hands and calm voice, she understood that courage could also mean accepting help when it was needed most. Finally, they reached the riverbank. The sound of flowing water was soothing, and the sight of flat, shaded ground made her feel a sense of relief she hadn't experienced in days. The cowboy helped her sit on a large rock, propping her leg carefully so it could rest and heal. He handed her water, and she drank gratefully, the cool liquid easing some of her tension. "You did it," he said softly, sitting beside her. "You were brave, even when it was scary." "I know it wasn't easy, but you made it." She looked at him, eyes wide and filled with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. I've never trusted someone like this before." "That's okay," he replied gently. "Trust is earned, and you've shown a lot of courage in letting yourself trust me. That's just as important as the steps we took to get here." For a while they sat quietly, listening to the river and feeling the warmth of the sun. The Apache woman reflected on the journey they had taken together, on the fear she had felt and the trust she had gradually allowed herself to give. She realized that survival was not just about skill or strength. It was also about courage, resilience, and the willingness to accept help when it came from someone who cared. As the day progressed, she felt her energy returning slowly. The cowboy had prepared a small spot with blankets and a few supplies, allowing her to rest comfortably. She stretched her fingers and toes, feeling the life returning to her body. Even though her ankle was still sore, she felt a growing confidence in her ability to recover. "Tomorrow, we can find a better way to move you back to your camp," the cowboy said. "For now, just rest. You've done enough for one day." She nodded, grateful for his patience and care.
"Thank you," she whispered. I don't know how to repay you."
You don't need to, he said with a small smile.
Helping each other is enough. As the sun began to lower in the sky again, casting golden light across the river, the Apache woman felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in days. Fear had been her companion for so long, but now it was tempered by trust, gratitude, and an understanding that courage came in many forms. She watched the cowboy gather firewood and prepare a small meal, his movements careful and methodical. Even in the wilderness, he brought a sense of order and calm. She realized how rare it was to meet someone who could face danger and uncertainty with such steady composure. Nightfall came again, and the Apache woman rested with her ankle elevated, wrapped securely by the cowboy's careful hands. The river's soft murmur lulled her into a light sleep. She dreamed of the plains, the winding trails, and the vast sky, but also of the kindness she had received and the courage she had discovered within herself. By the time she awoke, the first rays of sunlight were breaking through the trees, painting the world with a soft, gentle light. She stretched carefully, feeling stronger than the day before. The cowboy stirred beside her, already ready to help her continue their journey. "Ready to keep going?" he asked softly. She nodded, determination in her eyes. "Yes," she said, her voice firmer than before. "I'm ready." Together they rose and prepared to move once more, knowing the journey ahead would test their courage, endurance, and trust even further. Yet the Apache woman now understood something vital. Trust was not weakness, and courage could be found in accepting help when it was offered. With each careful step forward, she felt a growing confidence in herself and in the bond she had formed with the cowboy. The plains stretched wide before them, filled with both danger and beauty. But this time, she was not alone. She had learned that even in the harshest conditions, trust, courage, and kindness could guide a person safely through the unknown. The morning air was crisp, carrying the smell of earth and water from the river they had reached the previous evening. The Apache woman flexed her fingers and toes carefully, testing her ankle. It was sore but manageable, thanks to the cowboy's careful treatment. She felt a small spark of hope and determination. Today they would continue toward her camp, but the journey ahead promised to be the hardest part yet. The cowboy adjusted the supplies in his pack and offered his hand. "Ready?" he asked, his voice steady. She nodded and took it, her trust in him stronger now than ever. Step by careful step, they began moving along the trail that led away from the river. The ground was uneven and rocky, forcing them to go slowly. Every misstep could cause pain or injury, but they pressed on, determined to reach a safer place. The morning sun grew hotter as they climbed higher, and the Apache woman could feel her energy draining. The cowboy noticed her struggle and suggested short breaks at shaded spots whenever they could find them. Each pause was brief, but enough to let her catch her breath and regain focus. Despite the discomfort, she felt a strange sense of pride. She was pushing herself further than she had expected. As they rounded a narrow ridge, she froze suddenly. Below them a deep ravine stretched out, the rocks sharp and treacherous. One wrong step, and she could tumble down. Fear gripped her chest, making her heart race.
I don't think I can do this,
she whispered, voice trembling. The cowboy knelt beside her and looked her in the eyes. "You can," he said firmly but gently. "I'll be right here, step by step. I won't let anything happen to you. Just focus on me and your breathing. That's all you need to do." Her chest heaved as she tried to steady herself. The fear of the unknown, of slipping, of failing, was overwhelming. But she had come too far to turn back. Slowly, she nodded and took a deep breath. Step by step, she followed his guidance, feeling the rocky path beneath her feet. Pain shot through her ankle and every movement was tense. But the cowboy's calm presence kept her moving. Halfway across the ridge, a sudden loose rock shifted beneath her weight. She stumbled, letting out a sharp cry. The cowboy's hand shot out immediately, catching her and steadying her. "It's okay," he said gently. "I've got you. Just take a moment and breathe." She leaned heavily on him, her body trembling. The fear had returned, stronger than before, but the cowboy's reassurance gave her the courage to continue. She realized something important in that moment. Trust was not about being fearless, it was about moving forward even when fear was present, trusting someone to help you through it. After what felt like hours, they reached the other side of the ridge. Relief washed over her, but there was no time to rest too long. The plains stretched ahead, and the terrain would only grow more difficult before they reached her camp. They continued, moving slowly across the open land, the heat from the sun pressing down on them. By midday, the cowboy suggested a longer rest. He found a small cluster of trees that offered shade, and together they sat drinking water and eating a little food he had carried. The Apache woman leaned back against a tree, grateful for the brief respite. She studied the cowboy as he tended to their small supplies, noticing the careful precision in his movements, the quiet confidence that never wavered even in dangerous situations.
You know?
She said softly. I've always been careful. I've survived alone before, but I've never trusted anyone like this. I didn't think I could. That's natural, he replied, offering her a small smile. Trust is hard, especially when you're used to relying only on yourself. But courage doesn't mean never being afraid. It means moving forward even when you are. The words stayed with her as they rested, and when it was time to continue, she felt a renewed determination. They moved through the open plains, the sun climbing higher and casting shadows across the uneven ground. The journey was exhausting, but with each step, her trust in him deepened. She realized that survival was not just about skill or strength. It was also about relying on the right people at the right time. Late in the afternoon, dark clouds began gathering on the horizon. A storm was approaching and the winds picked up, carrying dust and a faint chill. The Apache woman's heart sank. The storm could make the trail slippery and dangerous, and they were still far from shelter. The cowboy noticed her concern. Storm's coming, he said calmly. We need to find cover, fast. There's a small hollow just ahead. It should keep us safe until it passes. She followed his lead, wincing as she stepped over rocks and roots. The wind whipped around them, tugging at their clothing and hair. The first drops of rain began to fall, sharp and cold. Her fear returned, stronger now with the storm pressing down on them. But she kept moving, leaning on the cowboy for guidance. The hollow they reached was small but sufficient to protect them from the worst of the storm. He helped her inside, arranging rocks and branches to make a dry spot to rest. She shivered, grateful for the protection, but also aware of how vulnerable she felt. Stay here, he instructed. I'll gather some extra wood and leaves to keep us warm and dry. She nodded, her chest tight with fear and relief. Watching him move confidently in the storm, she felt a deep sense of admiration and trust. She had come to understand that courage and care often went hand in hand, and this man embodied both. The storm raged outside, rain pounding the ground and wind howling through the hollow. Inside, the Apache woman huddled on the makeshift bedding, feeling the ache in her ankle and muscles from the long journey. Despite the discomfort, she felt a sense of safety she had never known in such situations. The cowboy returned, bringing extra leaves and a small bundle of firewood. He carefully lit a small fire, the warm glow filling the hollow. You did well today, he said softly, settling down beside her. Even with the storm, you kept going. That's real courage. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude, awe, and a deep emotional connection that had formed over the past days. I never thought I could make it through all this, she admitted. But you helped me. I trust you, he nodded, his expression serious but gentle. And I'll keep helping you as long as you need it. You've already shown how strong you are, even when it was hard. Trust and courage go together. You're proving that every step. Hours passed as the storm continued outside, but inside the hollow there was a sense of calm. The Apache woman rested, her mind replaying the journey of the day, the narrow ridge, the slippery rocks, the approaching storm. Each moment had been frightening, yet each had also shown her the value of trust, patience, and human connection. By evening, the storm began to ease. The rain slowed, and the wind softened. The Apache woman felt a renewed sense of strength and determination. She knew that the next day would bring further challenges, but the events of today had taught her something invaluable, that courage could be found in facing fear, and that trust could save a life. As darkness settled over the plains once more, the Apache woman prepared to sleep. She reflected on the cowboy's quiet strength and his unwavering care. She had never expected to rely on anyone so completely, but in doing so, she had discovered a new kind of strength within herself, a strength born not only of survival, but also of trust, patience, and the courage to accept help when it was needed most. For the first time in days, she felt a deep sense of gratitude and calm. She knew the journey was not yet over, but she also knew that she was no longer facing it alone. And with that thought, she drifted into a light, hopeful sleep, ready to face whatever challenges the next day would bring. The morning sun broke gently over the plains, casting a warm golden glow on the river and the land around them. The Apache woman stretched carefully, testing her ankle for pain. It was still sore, but it had improved greatly since the day she had injured it. The cowboy was already awake, moving quietly, his calm presence as steady and reassuring as ever. Today, they would finally reach her camp, the place that felt like home, and she felt a mix of excitement and relief. "Good morning," the cowboy said softly, noticing her stirring. "Ready to continue?" She nodded, a small smile forming on her lips.
Yes, she replied. Her voice was firmer than it had been in days.
There was a new strength in her, one she had discovered during the long journey: courage, patience, and trust. She realized that she had survived not just because of skill or instinct, but because she had allowed herself to accept help. Step by careful step, they began moving across the plains. The terrain was still uneven, but her ankle held firm, and the cowboy guided her with steady hands. Each movement reminded her of the lessons she had learned: focus, patience, and trust in someone who truly cared. The wind carried the scent of grass and earth, the sound of birds singing, and the occasional rustle of leaves. The world felt alive and vibrant, and she felt connected to it in a way she had not experienced during the fearful hours after her fall. As they walked, the cowboy spoke quietly. "You've done so well," he said. "Even with fear, pain, and uncertainty, you kept moving forward. That's true courage, not just surviving, but facing every challenge even when it scares you."
The Apache woman glanced at him, her eyes reflecting gratitude and respect.
"I never thought I could," she admitted. "But
"You helped me believe I could," he smiled. "Sometimes we all need a little help to find our own strength. You've shown me courage too. You've taught me patience and the power of trust." They continued along the trail, the sun climbing higher in the sky. The plains stretched wide and open before them, golden grass swaying in the gentle breeze. Each step brought them closer to her camp, closer to safety, and closer to the comfort of familiarity. The Apache woman felt a quiet joy welling inside her. She realized how fragile life could be, but also how precious and full of hope it was when someone extended a helping hand. By midday, they reached a small hill overlooking her camp. The sight of the familiar structures, the smoke rising from a distant fire, and the gentle movement of her people brought a deep sense of relief. Her heart swelled with gratitude and anticipation. She had feared she might never return here safely, but now, after days of pain, fear, and uncertainty, she was almost home. "Look," the cowboy said softly, gesturing toward the camp. "You're almost there. Just a little further." The Apache woman nodded, gripping his hand for support. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how to ever repay you for all you've done." "You don't have to," he replied gently. "The important thing is that you're safe." "That's enough." Together they descended the hill carefully, her ankle still tender but strong enough to move with his guidance. Each step was a reminder of the journey they had shared, the fear, the trust, and the courage that had carried them through. The path was familiar now, but it had been transformed by the experiences of the past days. It was no longer just a trail. It was a journey of growth, resilience, and human connection. As they approached the camp, the Apache woman's people noticed them and rushed forward. Faces filled with concern quickly shifted to relief as they saw her safe. "She's okay," someone called. "She made it," the woman smiled, tears forming in her eyes. She had feared this moment, the uncertainty of whether she could return safely, but now she was surrounded by the warmth and love of her people. They helped her carefully down the last steps, making sure her ankle was supported and that she was comfortable. The cowboy stayed beside her, quiet and composed. The Apache woman turned to him, gratitude and respect shining in her eyes. You saved my life," she said softly. "I will never forget what you did for me." He shook his head, a gentle smile on his face. "I didn't do it alone," he said. "You were brave. You faced every challenge, every fear, and kept moving forward. I just helped along the way. That's all." The Apache woman looked at him, realizing how true his words were. Courage and trust were not one-sided. She had faced her own fears, accepted help when she needed it, and in doing so, discovered a strength she had not known she possessed. And in return, the cowboy had shown her that kindness, patience, and calm determination could make a difference in the most difficult moments. The day stretched on as they settled her back into the camp. The people offered food, water, and gentle care, but her thoughts kept returning to the cowboy. She understood that their journey had been more than a simple rescue. It had been a test of trust, patience, courage, and human connection. The bond they had formed would remain with her forever, a reminder of the power of compassion and bravery. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange, pink, and purple, the Apache woman reflected on the journey. She had started as someone cautious and wary, relying only on her own instincts and knowledge of the land. She had faced danger, pain, and fear alone at first, but circumstances had forced her to accept help, and in doing so she had discovered something profound, that courage was not always solitary, and trust could be life-saving. She thought about the cowboy's steady hands, calm voice, and unwavering patience. She realized that it was not just skill that had saved her, but the way he respected her fears, explained each step, and offered reassurance without demanding obedience. He had guided her with kindness and care, never forcing her, always letting her maintain a sense of control even in the most difficult moments. As darkness fell over the camp, the Apache woman finally allowed herself to rest fully. Her ankle ached slightly, but the pain was manageable, and the warmth of her people, combined with the cowboy's quiet presence, brought comfort. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for surviving, but for having learned the true meaning of trust, courage, and human connection. The cowboy prepared to leave, knowing that her people could now take over her care. Before he departed, the Apache woman approached him, her voice steady but full of emotion. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything. For helping me, for trusting me, for showing me that courage isn't just about doing everything alone." He smiled gently, nodding. "You taught me something too," he replied. "You showed me that bravery can take many forms. It's not just facing danger. It's facing fear, accepting help, and moving forward anyway. You've shown me true courage." She watched him mount his horse and ride away, a figure of calm strength disappearing into the plains. Though she felt a small pang of sadness at parting, she also felt a deep sense of hope. Life would continue, as it always did, and she now carried with her the lessons of this journey, the value of trust, the power of courage, and the beauty of human kindness. The Apache woman returned to her people, her heart lighter than it had been in days. She shared her story, not just of the fall or the pain, but of the trust she had given, the courage she had found, and the person who had helped her survive. Her people listened with awe and admiration, understanding the depth of what she had experienced, and the strength she had shown. That night, as she lay resting, she thought back over the journey, the fear, the pain, the storms, and the narrow ridges. Each moment had been a test, and she had survived every one. But survival alone was not the lesson she carried now. It was the understanding that courage and trust, when combined, could overcome even the most daunting challenges. And sometimes help could arrive in the form of someone who simply cared enough to act. She closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the fire, the gentle voices of her people, and the memory of the cowboy who had guided her through the darkest moments. She realized that life, while fragile, was also filled with unexpected connections, courage, and hope. And in that realization, she found peace, strength, and a profound gratitude for the journey she had endured, and the person who had helped her along the way. As the night settled fully over the plains, the Apache woman drifted into a deep, restful sleep. She was safe. She was cared for, and she had learned that courage was not just about surviving alone, but about trusting, facing fear, and accepting the kindness of others. And she knew deep in her heart that this journey would stay with her forever. A story of bravery, trust, and the quiet power of human connection.